Mr. Morelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, always for your leadership, and thanks to the ranking member. Director, I want to say that I do trust you, and I'm very, very grateful for your service on behalf of this entire country and the people who put their faith in you and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I frankly find it somewhat astonishing at this date and the age in which we live that the American leadership here at times questions the role of the FBI. I don't question it. I know you have a tough job, and I appreciate all the incredible work that you do. If I may, I just wanted to, despite decreasing, I think you mentioned in your testimony, decreasing rates of homicide and non-fatal shootings in my community of Rochester, New York, upstate New York, we remain in a gun violence state of emergency. As you know, the passage of the 2022 Bipartisan Safer Communities Act implemented changes in the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, NICS, including a comprehensive background check on gun buyers under the age of 21 years old. In this fiscal year, you're requesting $43 million to sustain implementation of that act, as well as $8.4 million to support enhanced background checks, which includes funding to address provisions such as the under 21 background checks. And I'm just would ask, considering the critical role NICS plays in preventing firearms from reaching the wrong hands, can you just share with me how the budget request will allow the FBI to address these, what I expect are, and assume are pretty labor-intensive enhancements to the operation of NICS as transactions continue to grow?
So I appreciate the question. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act added a number of additional checks that NICS was responsible for conducting, specifically focused on, as we would call it, the U21 group population. And this committee, and we're very grateful for that, helped get us, at the time of the passage of the act, funding to bring on board positions and make certain systems changes. But the problem is it was one-time funding. And so that if we're going to sustain the work, then we need funding to continue it. And that's what you see reflected in the request here. It's both to continue those positions, because it's, as you say, very labor intensive, but also for systems enhancements to have the human workforce have them be even more efficient in their work. I've been out there myself and sat with the operators who were doing the checks on a couple of occasions to see, and so I can see kind of how labor intensive it is. I'm very pleased with the fact that they're already getting much, much faster at them. And I think that's only going to improve, but we still do need the funding. Again, the way to remember it is just funding was there, but it was one-time funding, and we just need the funding to sustain it. Otherwise, it sort of loses its effectiveness.
And that's going to be obviously an annual request then to be able to continue to maintain this, and I suspect
Yes,
may even require additional dollars in future years to be able to deal with the growing number of challenges that we have there. If I can, coordination and partnership between the FBI and state, local, and tribal entities is integral to the security of communities across the nation. In my community, the FBI leads the Rochester Area Major Crimes Task Force, the Child Exploitation Task Force, and the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and participates in the Rochester Safe Streets Task Force. Considering your successful nationwide efforts alongside state and local law enforcement partners to combat violent crime, could you describe how the proposed budget will further enhance and strengthen information sharing and coordination among not only the FBI, but all your local partners?
So the biggest part of our budget request in 25 is to restore and essentially the cuts that we endured in the 24 budget, which there's no way to sustain without having an impact on our efforts on violent crime, on child exploitation, on a whole range of threats that we're responsible for protecting the American people from. And so the request will allow us to continue the good work that's being done in upstate New York and elsewhere on gang violence, on child exploitation, on cyber attacks, on the cartels and organized crime, which, as I said before, that's not just a border problem. It affects all 50 states, and we're seizing huge amounts of fentanyl all over the country. So all these things are incredibly important. Our folks are doing great work. On the violent crime side, for example, just last year, we were arresting through our task forces 50 violent criminals and child predators per day, every day, all year long. So a cut means more bad guys on the street, more gangs terrorizing neighborhoods, more kids at risk, et cetera.
I see my time has expired. Mr. Chair, you're always very gracious. I appreciate it. Director, thank you for your continued service, sir. I yield back.
Mr. Clyde?